by Purdue or its prescription opioids like OxyContin, you may be entitled to compensation as part of Purdue's bankruptcy, but you have to file a claim. Claims may include overdose, death, substance use disorder, lost wages, and neonatal abstinence syndrome. A confidential claim can be filed by individuals, a legal guardian, by survivors or relatives of people who have died or are disabled. The deadline to file a claim is June 30th, 2020, or you will lose your right to file a claim. For more information, visit PurduePharmaClaims.com, or you can call toll-free 1-844-217-0912. That's 1-844-217-0912. Paid for by Prime Clerk, LLC.
I'm Reverend Peter Preble, host of Faith in America on WCRN 830 AM. On Faith in America, we hold conversations at the crossroads of faith and society. Faith in America, Sunday mornings at 6 a.m., right here on WCRN.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Lavache, you're all set with your mortgage, and I assume you understand what you just signed.
A stack of papers, George?
That's right. And for future, just call this number if you need anything. And, ooh, yeah, I'm gonna need that pen back.
The mortgage process can be confusing. Looking for the right rate, the right term, and most importantly, the right place to get your mortgage. At Clinton Savings Bank, we are committed to getting the mortgage that's right for you. You may even receive up to a $750 credit off your closing costs. Plus, right now, you can lock in the rate from your pre-qualification for 90 days while you look for a home. So what are you waiting for? Definitely not this.
Oh, boy. Hi, Mrs. Lavache. How can I help? You're breaking up. Try again later.
Subject to credit approval. Offer may be withdrawn at any time. For complete details, exclusions, and credit costs and terms, call 888-744-4272. Apply at clintonsavings.com. NMLS number 422081. Member FDIC. Member DIF. Equal housing lender.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers 1-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 Drive Ed. Who's Ed?
That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click Levante'sAutoSchool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to follow the rules and keep your cool. 877 Drive Ed.
Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Hi, this is Brian Carpenter from One Worcester Homes. We're excited to offer the strongest buyer and seller representation throughout Worcester County and all the surrounding areas. Our agents are trained better and will look out for your best interests throughout the entire transaction. To reach out to One Worcester Homes, simply find us on Facebook, type in One Worcester Homes. We look forward to the opportunity to help you and your family in your home buying or selling transaction. And don't forget to join us the 4th Saturday of every month at 7:30 on Handling Change.
The following is a paid program. The opinions are those of the host and guests, and not necessarily those of the station or its management.
This is the Joe Mangicotti Show. Our topics are large and small. When you really need to know, we are the show. You want to know? It's time to talk to you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Joe Mangicotti Show. I am Joe Mangicotti in studio here at AM 830 WCRN and AM 730 WACE. I'm only in the one studio, though. Teddy Goodpup is with me, and Shane behind the glass, flying the board this morning. Good morning, Shane.
Good morning, Joe. How are you today?
Great. How was your week?
It was all right. It was a pretty full week, thankfully.
Good.
So I worked a pretty full 40 hours, kept me busy, and now we're at Saturday already.
Do you feel that there's a little bit of we've turned the corner? The president was saying that in the press the other day, that it just seemed that the energy has gotten a little different. We see cases declining, deaths declining, some states, and we're going to talk about this, by the way, in the show, starting to open up again. Do you think we've turned the corner? Do you feel a difference?
I do. I think things have kind of shifted a little bit. It's not quite overblown, and I think things are kind of started to go over the hump, maybe, or at least at the hump, and started to slowly go over
the curve.
Flatten
out the curve. All right, we've got great stuff lined up for this morning. First of all, some housekeeping stuff, folks, right? 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. We also have our text line, and that text line is 617-297-8388. Now, just like you're texting anybody, your buddy to meet you for beer, whatever the case is, just send the message to 617-297-8388. And if you don't have the ability to text, but you can email, if you email, text Joe on the radio. All one word. I know that's extremely clever. Took us ages to come up with this. But text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen. And yes, thank you to the texters who text in. The streaming is up. We can be heard live streaming on the TuneIn app. We are also streaming on our Facebook page. So if you go to Joe Mangione Show, it's Joe Mangione Radio Show, but the hashtag on that is at Joe Mangione Show. You've got the audio. Yes, there's a camera in the studio. Don't expect a big, fancy production, but the audio is there. Speaking of big, fancy productions, Thursday night, I was on Harry Berkowitz's About the Valley show in the Northbridge station, and that is a heck of a setup. Northbridge Access Channel there. Beautiful, beautiful sets. They've got the green screen so they can put you anywhere in the world. The equipment is fantastic. They run a really, aces operation down there at Northbridge Community Access. So they did post it. I will put it on Joe Mangione Show Facebook, YouTube page, and I'll share it when it's on there. But if you go to nctv.us and look up About the Valley, you can see it on there. Had a great time. I've been invited to go back in May, and we'll do that. We never got to politics, Shane. Right? We really didn't get to politics. We just kind of got into radio industry and just my life a little bit, but we will get into politics because I am told that when you do get into politics on that particular show, the phones light up and people do get involved. So I look forward to that. All right, so that's that. Tomorrow, of course, I'll be here at 7 to 8, and 6 to 7 is Reverend Peter Preble with Faith in America, another Cameo Media production. And congratulations, I said it last week, and congratulations to the Reverend and his wife. They have their first child, came into the world, 6 pounds, I think 4 ounces, healthy baby girl in the middle of COVID-19. So it's going to be a great story for the rest of her life, right? Born in the middle of quarantining and lockdown, she decides to come into the world. So congratulations, Reverend. Good luck with everything there. 508-871-7000. So at 6:30, I am going to be joined by Michael Fisher. Now, Michael Fisher, he's a community advocate. He's currently the president of New York Central Park South Civic Association. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about homelessness because obviously homelessness isn't something that just came on the scene. We've been talking about it, pointing it out on this show for a long time. Nancy Pelosi's up there in her gated mansion overlooking the San Francisco harbor. And down the street, people are defecating in the street and living under bridges. And we'll talk about homelessness a little bit here. In hour 2, we're going to actually be joined by another Michael, believe it or not. So hour 2, Michael Busler will join us. And Michael is a PhD, a doctorate in public policy analyst, economics expert, and he happens to be professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. And I think that we're going to touch on kind of the supply chains and the economy with Dr. Busler in hour 2. So that's what's coming up for this show this day in quarantine. I don't even know what day is this for quarantine. Do we have any idea? Because Governor Baker Parker kind of kicked it in after some of the other states, and that's something we'll talk about because a lot of these governors are way overreaching. 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones. First call for this day is Dawn from Stoughton. Good morning, Dawn. You look
Good morning,
marvelous.
Joe. Good morning, Shane et al., the assembled multitudes, whoever else is there and listening. But really wanted to jump in quick this morning. The situation here in Massachusetts, the governor refuses to allow gun shops to open, and a gentleman in Middleborough is taking the governor to court.
Good.
But on top of that is the outrageous actions of police chiefs and licensing authorities in Massachusetts. Joe, under the U.S. Constitution, under the 7th Amendment, you have the right in any civil case to have a jury trial.
Right.
And I've spoken to you before about this.
They
That
don't.
Massachusetts, you can only get a bench trial. Well, this is the insanity. This goes back to when the King of England took the right of the colonists to have their trials heard in the United States, or excuse me, in the colonies, and one of them heard up in Halifax or in England. Because if the sheriff acted improperly, they got sued, Joe, and boy, did they get hit with some big financial sums that they had to cough up. Well, the king did not like that because it was their right as British subjects to be able to sue corrupt public officials. Well, here today, you don't even have your most basic right of the Seventh Amendment. And a lot of states say that the Seventh Amendment was not incorporated into the Bill of Rights and therefore is not applicable. The 14th Amendment applies, Joe, and maybe the 13th, no slavery, but not the 7th, where you can have a jury trial if you're denied, and especially, Joe, when you're denied the lawful exercise of a right. Now, what galls me, Joe, is that so many cops, so many police chiefs, we're just obeying orders. Well, no, guys. If a law is unconstitutional, you can't enforce it. And yet so many of them cave in, Joe, and they're just telling us, we're just doing what the law tells us to do, and we must obey these orders. And this goes back to the governor stating, I'm closing gun shops. Well, Joe, what good is exercising a right if you can't exercise it by going down to the store and buying the firearm that you can exercise your right with? This just floors me, especially with the Seventh Amendment. No jury trial. You're not heard before your peers.
Right.
You have to appear at a bench trial where only the judge is sitting and makes a ruling.
Don,
and if you win, you don't even get your money back where you had to buy the time in court, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, your first call is actually very, very good. It very much lines up with what I wanted to talk about initially this morning, and that was the overreach of these governors and what's going on. Because you look, the left and certain governors are using this emergency to further an agenda that they've had all along, and to do look at even on the level, the federal level. Don, we saw Nancy Pelosi et al. Trying to slide into these emergency funding, right, for the stimulus. Again, I don't like to call it stimulus. I like to call it just a Band-Aid thing because we didn't need. We had a very
the return of our money, Joe.
Exactly. Well, the point is they tried to stick in money for illegals and money for regulations for the airlines and all these Green New Deal things.
Green New Deal.
And they tried to put it in there. It was holding it up. And look at when you are using in an emergency to get your personal agenda through that you know would never see the light of day on the floor in a legitimate debate, in a legitimate vote, that is skanky. That is dirty.
The only way Democrats can do it, though, Joe.
I didn't say that, but you're right. And the point is, that's not the time, and they should be held accountable for this. Meanwhile, they're closing gun shops, parks. We know that, the thing about this is we know that sunlight, right, kills it.
Ultraviolet radiation kills most bacteria and virus.
Yep. So you're going to close the park, and this is where when the left is like that, right, the left always assumes that we are morons and that they have to treat us like third graders, and because they know it's better for you. They can't say, no, of course the parks are open. Just practice your 6 foot distancing, right? Yeah. 6 foot. Don't touch each other, but go have a walk. But if I can walk down Shaw's or Big Y and come within 18 inches of somebody as I go by the aisle, I certainly can be 200 yards away from somebody outdoor in a park.
No, come on, Joe. You're making sense now. Stop it.
You can't go out
into
into
Massachusetts.
Yeah, you can't go out into Lake Michigan in a rowboat by yourself and drop right. And what's the thing with the seeds? See, this isn't new. There has always been, and it can be nothing but nefarious reasons to stop. They don't want us, meaning the citizenship, right, to grow our own gardens. They don't want us to plant our own food and have our own gardens. It's as if they're in a bigger picture. They want to make sure that all of the food chain is controlled by the government.
There you go. Yeah.
So this is the overreaching of these governors are unbelievable, and I love the fact that I have heard several times in the last month the phrase, "That's above my pay grade," when talking about the Constitution of the United States. Or
New Jersey.
Or how about this one? I wasn't even considering the Constitution when I made those orders. A sitting governor. I mean, right there, don't you think you should be removed from office at that point?
Oh, wait a second. Is he a Republican or a Democrat governor?
My goodness.
If he's a Democrat, we can excuse him because, Joe, remember that the majority of people voted for Hillary Clinton, a Democrat. They wanted her as president.
Yeah,
she got more popular vote.
Yeah.
So talk about the stupidity of the American people.
Yeah. And you know, remember the debate when and Trump called her on the carpet about the gun decision. And you're going to know this. It's blank in my, but she said she tried to backtrack that she was for it. She said because she had said off camera and stuff that it was that the Supreme Court got it wrong and so forth. And it was about what was the big case? I think it was Maryland. It went to the Supreme Court, the last big one in
was it Maryland or the Chicago case?
Maryland. And it was the case, the teacher and the gun. Oh, man, you know, I'm going to have to look it up. I'm sorry, I don't remember it. But it was on the debate. It was made reference on the debate, and she was so trying to backtrack it on the stage in front of American people where she, just like Beto and Biden and everybody else, trust me, folks, they do want to take your guns. They say, we don't want to take your guns. We just want common sense. See, they think that's their out, right? Common sense gun legislation. Well, you know what? You can't even handle the crime situation in Chicago in the 30 or 40 gunshots, you know, that happen there every weekend.
Quote, gun violence. I didn't know guns were violent. I thought they were wonderfully, perfectly, you know, inanimate objects.
It can't be any plainer than this, folks. When you pass gun laws, only law-abiding citizens follow them, and they're not the problem, right? They are not the problem. We have millions of people who are permitted to carry, plus we have hundreds of millions of guns and billions of rounds of ammunition in the country, not worldwide, in the United States. If we were the problem, the legal, law-abiding, everyday citizen, you would know it. We're not the problem. It's the criminal who, by definition, do not follow the law to begin with. So you can pass all the laws you want, Don. They're not going to pay. It has no effect on them whatsoever. And the Fox-Bartlett law, you know what the Fox-Bartlett law is here in Massachusetts.
Sure.
How many
1 year in jail.
How many people go to jail in the Fox-Bartlett law?
Nobody. It always gets pled down.
It's the first thing that's pled out, right? Very few people have ever gone to prison.
And Joe, whenever you, under the Obama administration, the use of a gun in a crime is usually a federal felony.
Yeah.
And for the most part, Obama never prosecuted. Here's this big gun guy. Obama says, well, we have to get guns off the street, blah, blah, blah. Well, Mr. Obama, how many people did you prosecute under federal law for using guns illegally that violated federal law? Well, gee, I don't know. I'm just Obama. I'm stupid. Well, there you go. And look at all the people that vote the Democrat Party. How stupid are they? Do they hold their public servants accountable, Joe? The answer is no.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Don, it's a crazy world, but we have to keep our eye on everything, and I do have full line. So anything else before I got to run?
Yeah, we have to hold our public servants and the police chiefs.
Absolutely.
Laws are merely presumed constitutional, Joe. If they're not constitutional, you do not enforce them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Good point. Thank you, Don. Always a pleasure. Don from Stoughton. Love to hear it from John. 508-871-7000. As I'm still wiping down, it's become this habit, right? So I'm still wiping down the computer in my work area, and I don't even realize I'm doing it anymore. 508-871-7000. Let's go to Mark in Worcester. Good morning, Mark. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I want to talk about what the president did last night at the press conference. He finally gave the press the finger. And he should have did it a year ago. They talked down to him like he's a bellhop, you know, like a pack of juvenile delinquents. And he finally had enough of it, and he gave him the finger. He showed him his back, and he walked right out of the press conference. That's the first thing I want to say.
Great.
The second thing is Trump has given more time to the press than in the last week or week and a half than Obama did in the 8 years of his presidency, and that's a fact.
Mark, that is a fantastic point, because we heard that the Obama administration was going to be this transparent, right, administration. I got to tell you, the Trump organization is the most transparent presidency in my lifetime. And look about the unfettered access to this guy. Like you said, he goes out there, it's 2 to 3 hours every day during this, right? No other president would give that much time and access to reporters, i.e. than the American people. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what other president in recent history, Mark, could actually do a 2 to 3 hour presser like that every day, unscripted, like he does. Could you imagine Obama doing that without a teleprompter? Could you imagine Joe Biden trying to do that same thing, even if he was from the basement?
Joe, Obama handpicked everybody that was sitting in that press corps.
Yeah.
He handpicked them. He and his staff. They also handed him the questions.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to ask the president.
And that,
this is what you're not going to ask the president.
And that ties back to what you were saying is that the press, when they get in there to the White House briefing room, or they're on the lawn of the White House, it doesn't matter. The attitude and the disrespect for the office of the presidency that these reporters have, it's disgusting. They feel that because in their world, you got to remember, in their world, Trump is a buffoon. He's an idiot, right? So you can see that come out, that they do not respect him and they actually look down at him. And I got to tell you, that is wrong. And I would rotate that press corps, the White House press corps. I think they should rotate those people out so that it's not the same buffoons in there every single day, week in to week out, that they rotate the reporters that come in. So you've got fresh faces in there. You've got a fresh perspective from time to time. And then you're going to get reporters, Mark, who are actually honored to be part of the White House press corps.
Well, he did the right thing last night. He turned his back on him and he walked out. The last thing I want to bring up, and this is very important, that the great state of Missouri, which is what they call it, the real Missourians, they call it Missouri, filed a class action lawsuit against the People's Republic of China. They should be awarded, whoever in the state of Missouri who decided to file that class action lawsuit should get the Congressional Medal of Honor. As far as I'm concerned, somebody's got to be made to pay for this mess.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Mark. Always appreciate it. All right, 508-871-7000. Did we have another call? We're good? Okay. So, Trump, the Trump show is canceled, right? So he did walk out of the coronavirus briefing, and it was only after 22 minutes, and he refused to take questions after that disinfectant disaster thing that went on. And, they talked about this on the 5 and so forth. And you got to say something. I got to say something here and there. Let's address it, because people, and I know that certain people are going to love this, right? The pundits who are left and hate Trump. Oh, he told people, to inject themselves. First of all, he had never said the word injection. But the point is, he was up there. And again, he does this thing, this press conference, ad-libbed, right, off the cuff for two. I mean, he has prepared statements, but then he takes these questions, and he doesn't know what's coming. And he's constantly being bombarded with information, right, suggestions and guidelines and stuff from all of the doctors and experts around him. And you could tell he was, I call it riffing. He was kind of riffing. He was just out there. He's like, oh, this and that. He's told by the experts, sunlight, right, kills it in seconds, right? It can live hours on this and more hours on that, and it can survive in these things, but sunlight will kill it, disinfect it will kill it. And he's saying, so, you wash your hands, you wipe your hands, that kills it. The light, and right before he got into the disinfectant, guys, he was talking about there are ways to get UV light into the skin and into the bloodstream. And he's making a comparison that if we could get the equivalent of a disinfectant into the body, that would work. I got what he was saying. I could see how his mind was working, but boy, they latched onto that and trying to say, he's saying, and then Nancy Pelosi saying, hey, the president is saying to inject yourself with Lysol. First of all, you're putting words in his mouth and you're twisting it. And again, you're focusing on the wrong thing, folks, right? So close, but always so far away. You're focusing on the wrong thing. Focus on the issue at hand. All right? And we've got bigger problems. And now we've got this trend here, or not a trend, but it's coming out that the nursing homes, and Cuomo is going to have a problem with this because, he's kind of made a new name for himself doing his pressers, and he's getting a lot of attention there. And, a few weeks ago, there was even, mumblings and gropings about drafting Cuomo. But the policies in New York required that patients, elderly patients who had COVID-19, when released, had to go to these nursing homes if they had the beds. Now, you don't send an infected COVID-19 patient into an elderly situation. Now, last night I was watching a doctor and I left my notes on my desk is the problem here. But he's in New York, and he was saying, look, the situation here is that 2/3 of these deaths are people over 60, right? So we're having the majority of the people that are dying have underlying, and almost 90% of people who have died from COVID-19 infection have actually had underlying health issues. Biggest ones being obesity and diabetes, and then compromised immune systems. And if you take the elderly aspect out, put a pin in that for a moment, 50% of the people who died have had underlying issues. It's less than 0.06 if you talk about somebody under 30 and healthy. All right. And we still haven't reached in this country the number of deaths in the worst year of the flu. So I think we've gotten by the worst part of this.
Break anytime.
And we're ready for a break? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have my clock. So we're going to take a break here right now. We're going to go to Out with Joe, check in with myself on the Out with Joe at outwithjoe.com. When we come back on the other side, we're going to be joined by Michael Fisher here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show, 508-871-7000. We'll be back in just a moment, folks.
Bam, bam, bon appetit.
Out with Joe. You're listening to Out with Joe. Out with Joe.
Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. You buy a hat like this, I'll let you get a free bowl of soup, huh?
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Nothing But Cakes in White City Plaza, Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week we thought we'd take a look at how much to tip your delivery driver during coronavirus. Extreme situations call for extreme tipping. It's the right thing to do. Tipping is an unavoidable part of U.S. culture at any time. But as we rely more on food, grocery, and restaurant delivery during the coronavirus outbreak, the amount you should be tipping is climbing. Delivery drivers put themselves at greater risk of exposure to the COVID-19 disease that so far resulted in over 362,000 confirmed cases in the U.S. alone, so that you don't have to go outdoors. They're also often collecting minimum wage without hazard pay. The suggested amount is to tip at least 20% on all takeout and delivery orders, or more to show appreciation at a time when the unemployment rate has spiked to reach an all-time high in the U.S. So how much to tip at restaurants and bars in general? Well, let's look at that first. The good news is that you're not expected to tip the same amount at a 5-star restaurant as you would when ordering at the counter. But tips are acceptable, appreciated, and even expected for a person who serves you and cleans up when you're done. The same goes for delivery and carryout. So in general, coffee shop baristas, $1 or so per drink, more for complicated orders like half-calf, no-fat soy latte with light foam and extra shot, whatever that means, or less for simple orders, hot water and a tea bag. Bartenders, $1 to $2 per drink, more for mixed drinks, less for drafts, or 20% if you're running a tab. Dine-in restaurant service, about 20%, or more for outstanding service. Buffet servers, 10 to 15%, depending on how many plates, forks, and refills you go through. Fast fast casual counter service, up to $1 for taking your order. $2 to $5 if they bus your table or deliver your food. Restaurant carryout service, 10% more for large, complicated orders, such as baby shower or office party. Food delivery drivers, 10% or up to 20% or more during hazardous road conditions or special circumstances, such as holidays or big.
He says he wants to follow up something that Don said. Everything that Don was saying, he has a few things he wants to just quickly follow up. So maybe we take him just first and get him out of the way?
Yeah,
all right.
Real quick. And then
Okay. All right, let's do that.
Hey, and don't forget that the minimum wage for these type of employees are far less than the standard minimum wage in any given state. Other things to keep in mind when tipping: cash is preferable to credit, but giving a credit card tip is better than going short on cash. It's rude to leave intentionally small tip, like a handful of change after a $50 meal. If you have exceptionally poor service, talk to the manager. Leaving no tip might be appropriate in extreme cases. The likelihood that a server will spit into your food is relatively low, so we don't recommend tipping solely to avoid that type of behavior. Rather, tip to acknowledge the work or service that has been done. For more on dining, entertainment, and news, click outwithjoe.com and follow us on social media at OutWithJoe. Out with Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bundt Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury, on Facebook at Nothing Bundt Cakes Shrewsbury. Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask.
10 seconds, we're back.
Told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing Bundt Cake Shrewsbury.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show. You want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the first hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN and AM 730 WAC. And, of course, live streaming on the TuneIn app. We're also streaming on our Facebook page, so go to Joe Mangi Show, and you can get the audio. There's a camera stuck up in the corner. It's not a big production, folks. 508-871-7000. We had Al going out of the last segment and into it, so I'll just take you real quick. Al, good morning. Thanks for holding. How are you, sir?
Good. As I said, I think that Don did a very good job of explaining a lot of things. And I think sometimes people, not Don, but a lot of us, tend to try to package it into two competing conspiracies or theories or whatever you want to explain it as.
Sure.
And for years, they used the pretty much straight-out communist conspiracy and pattern to follow to take over the world. Then they started changing into individual topics like the ecology, like social responsibility, and a whole bunch of other singular ones to find out what people would listen to. Well, because of the culture change conspiracies, and there's more than one, I think they finally got the people to miss a few key points. And they discovered with this coronavirus and everything else, hey, this is a good way to promote our cause, which is unlimited government. And instead of just keeping people like Sanders and Comrade Pocahontas in the light, shift over and have a lot of the governors do it whether they know what they're doing or not. And so now they're issuing these unconstitutional edicts about, well, you can't open your store for so many more months or whatever because of this, that, and the other thing, which is a lot of baloney. And so on on April 1st, I believe it was, a lawsuit was filed against Taldeval's edict that gun stores must close. And I don't think people really looked at that as the new shift. That style of politics and social regression and fascist than communist. Of course, they both are very similar, going along together, but have some different emphasis on how to enforce things, how to terrorize people, and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I see, for a while anyway, the parallel conspiracy of fascism going along with the communist route, but kind of taking over the lead for a while until it becomes more practical to go back to the more political type thing.
Absolutely. I think that we do see that, Al. We see that these governors are taking this opportunity, and like you said, whether they realize it enough, to really overreach into private businesses, which is fascism, actually. And they are, across the board, we're seeing violations of the Constitution, right? Attorney General Barr, he was recently on an interview, and he said, hey, when you're faced with a potential catastrophe, the government can deploy measures and even put temporary and reasonable restrictions on rights if really necessary to meet the danger, but it still has the obligation to adapt to the circumstances. Whatever powers the government has, whether it be the president or the state governor, still is bounded by constitutional rights of the individual. A federal constitution rights don't go away in an emergency. They constrain what the government can do. And in circumstances like this, they put on the government the burden to make sure that whatever burden it's putting on our constitutional liberties are strictly necessary to deal with the problem. They have to be targeted. They have to use less intrusive means if they are equally effective in dealing with the problem. And that's the situation that we're in today. We're moving into a period where we have to do a better job of targeting the measures we're deploying to deal with this virus. Good call, Al. Thank you very much, and thank you for holding 508-871-7000 to reach the studio for Two-Way Talking Conversation, and our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388. All right. Homelessness has always been a problem. We have discussed the issue on this show. Just about every show on this station and across America has talked about homelessness. We've talked about right here locally the homelessness problems that we have, the signing, right? The people approaching your car at the stop signs, the programs here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a fantastic state if you are in need of anything, right? If you need housing, if you need to get detoxed and cleaned, medical attention, Massachusetts does a really good job on all of these fronts. And there are very different types of homelessness. But let me invite into the conversation Michael Fisher. And Michael is a community advocate and president of New York Central Park South Civic Association. Good morning, Michael, and thank you for taking time out early on a Saturday morning to join us.
Good morning. My pleasure. I've been listening to your show. You have a great show, and you have some very, very good callers, especially 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday. I'm impressed.
I got to tell you, Michael, I've always said that we have some of the best callers in talk radio across the board. We've been doing basically this weekend Saturday mornings. We're in our 14th year. It was named a different show, but it has developed a very strong and engaged community. And I can look forward to very intelligent callers and people who listen. Well, it's great.
Your last caller was really good, and I was thinking about the governor of New Jersey who said the Bill of Rights was above his pay grade. It's just pretty pathetic. Yeah. These governors.
Yeah, I got to tell you, and I know you hadn't listened to all the show, but I opened the show with talking about that. That I've heard these cases above Mike or the other one, Michael, right? Well, I wasn't even thinking of the Constitution when I gave those orders.
It's crazy. The homeless problem, is really becoming a disaster. And I got to tell you, New York City is a complete mess. I mean, this problem has just become just so bad. I know that in Boston, you guys definitely have a problem there. I think you're handling it better than New York is. We, with regard to the coronavirus, I mean, I can't. One thing I've learned from this whole coronavirus is just how I don't want to use these words. I probably shouldn't use these words, but I'll use them anyway. How stupid these politicians are. I mean, I just I just shake my head. In New York City, for example, the subway system has turned into a homeless shelter, and you have people that are riding the subways that are essential workers, medical workers that need to get to the hospitals, and they're packed in the subways with
Right.
a lot
So they're
of
putting
homeless
this
people who are
this petri dish of people
Yeah.
who are infected with non-people who are infected, and then the essential employees. I mean, what about Cuomo's comment the other day to that reporter about jobs, and he kind of snapped at her about, well, then get a job as an essential employee. And I'm watching that go down, Michael, and I'm like, whoa, maybe it's gotten to him. You know, I mean, you can see the president get frustrated. Maybe he's lost it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. At his presser, he kind of snapped at this reporter who was saying about getting back to work and certain employees and people need to get their jobs. And he says, well, I'll decide who's essential employees. And he goes, you have a job? Well, then go get a job. I mean, it was just crass and the wrong attitude to take in this situation. People are getting to the end of their ropes here, governor and president. But going back, to the homeless situation. Now, this just didn't happen under COVID-19. This has been an ongoing issue for a very, very long time, right? We see California and places changing the local ordinance to allow defecation in the street.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we're worried about this invisible enemy, and you're allowing such unsanitary practices to be accepted because it's politically correct?
That's it's all about optics when it comes to the politicians. They feel that they're doing
the optics of someone defecating in the street.
Yeah,
not great optics.
Right. No, but in their opinion, they feel it's good optics to let them stay in the streets. Their feeling is if they want to stay in the streets, to let them stay in the streets, just like the subways. The same thing. If they want to sleep in the subways, let them sleep in the subways, even though they're probably carrying the virus. It would be. I mean, the mayor was saying the other day, it's just not the right thing to do to remove them from the subways. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, the whole thing. I mean, first of all, defecating in the streets, we're setting ourselves up for another virus down the road because it's going to be a disaster. I mean, the next virus in Manhattan, we're seeing a huge growth of homeless people that are on the streets. These homeless people are mostly mentally ill. They don't want to go into shelters, and there's no modern rehabilitation facilities at all out there that actually are designed to actually help the homeless to get back to a normal life. So they're either in the streets or they're in the shelters, and most of them will go to the shelters. But going back to the new shelter and the trains, I mean, these people are riding the trains. A lot of people have gotten sick riding the trains. I mean, if you look at New York City, for example, there are about 300,000 confirmed cases of people who have the virus. I'm willing to bet it's even higher than that. And then you look at New Jersey, 102,000 people that are confirmed with the virus. And then you go down the list, 50,000 Massachusetts, 41,000 California. So, I say to myself, well, the reason why we have such a high incidence of people with this virus, a lot of people have caught it on the train. Think about it. They go on the trains, they're going all throughout the city.
Yeah.
Then they leave the trains, they pass it to somebody else, or they, like the Petri dish you mentioned. So they're catching it on the trains, and they come back to Jersey, they go to Queens, they go to Long Island. They're just passing this virus all over the place. It's interesting. I was talking about this to the press the other day, and this gentleman named Abby Collins, he's the MTA Chief Communications Officer, responded to me saying this by saying, the Civic Association is an out-of-touch Manhattan elite. I mean, you got to be kidding. I mean, this guy should be fired for even saying that. What the city should be doing is either they should be removing the homeless from the subways, what they could do is create tents. I mean, look, the federal government came in and built all these hospitals, portable hospitals. Build these portable drop-in centers.
A 1,000-bed hospital in 4 days, almost 3 days. And these are, I don't know if you saw them, but I was checking them out and doing a little research. And I mean, they have a bed, they're big enough to have machinery in there and a chair and so forth. I mean, look, there are solutions, but on the bigger picture of homelessness, can homelessness be divided, Michael, into categories? Because you had made reference to the mental illness and my experience with through doing these radio shows, but I also involved in certain charities and boards. One of the boards I sit on is Safe Homes, and that deals with a lot of youth homelessness or LGBTQ youth homelessness, and that's, I think, a very unique category, right? Because there is a home there, but they're out of their home for other reasons. But in the bigger picture of homelessness, is it broken down into categories when we study homelessness? Is there, okay, you've got the mental health issue. You got people with mental illness who don't have the capacity to make the right decisions. Then you've got people who suffer from, addicts, and they don't go to the shelters because the shelters typically come with rules, right? And they're structured, and you can't get high, and you can't be drunk in it, and you have to be there by a certain time at night. So they elect not to go into the shelter. I know in Massachusetts, if you are ill, if you find yourself homeless and in a bad situation, we have a lot of programs that, we have shelters, we've got Mass Health to get you on Mass Health with nothing. You will get the medical attention you need. We will put you into either a shelter or find you a home of some type, right? But there's all kinds of programs. As a matter of fact, the DTA, the Department of Transitional Assistance, spends millions of dollars a year on hotel rooms. They will rent families hotel rooms. So my point, and I do have one here, Michael, is if you are in a bad situation because of circumstances, at least in Massachusetts, you can get to a point where you're guaranteed a roof over your head and 3 meals a day and health care. So why do we have homelessness if we're willing to do that?
Well, it's interesting. In New York City, for example, the mayor is spending $3 billion a year on the homeless situation, and it's becoming so out of control. And you can do it for a lot less cost. There's a lot of military bases that are closing down. You have those facilities which could be used. You have hospitals that are closing down. You could use those facilities. Hotels that are closing down. The federal and state government need to partner more together because there's a lot of federal land and buildings that could be used as well for a lot less cost. There's a big increase right now in the homeless population with single men and single women. Less families, more single men, single women on the streets, and a lot of them are mentally ill. A lot of them are drug issues or they're alcoholics, and some of them are psychiatric issues where they need medication. But if they would create like these more modern facilities where you help people off the streets and you move them into these less expensive facilities that I just mentioned, and try to rehabilitate them, you probably could get maybe 30%, 40% of them training and back into the job market and into affordable housing. And affordable housing doesn't need to be in the most expensive areas of Boston or the most expensive areas of Manhattan. They can be in much less expensive areas. The problem is that these politicians are reactive. They react when the problem gets so bad that now all of a sudden there's nothing they can do about it. And they've
got to create a new bill. Right? To handle everything, we got to put new legislation in, and we need more money and new money instead of looking at it and trying to solve it before it gets that bad. And as you made reference to, there are so many abandoned buildings and the military housing and colleges that are actually getting more and more. Now with this distance learning that we're doing, right? I think that is going to continue. I think that this situation has opened the door for both more people to be working remotely and from home, as well as an uptick in the whole brick and mortar, going away from the brick and mortar in the classroom and doing the online stuff. Because let's face it, I don't know if you've gone to college or whatever, but the point, of course you did, right? I'm looking at you go to a lecture, half the time the professor isn't there. Right? It's a TA or a video, or you're doing it online anyway. So I think that can happen. But the point being that there are a lot of structure out there. It may be some.
I hate to say this, but some people end up on the streets because they can't afford to pay their college loans off. These colleges rip these kids off when they go to college. $60,000, $70,000 a year tuition. They tack out these really expensive loans but I can't figure this out. 5 or 6% interest. and they can't pay the loans off, and forever they're having to try to pay these expensive loans off. It just doesn't make sense to me. These schools need to be held more accountable to this. They're making millions and millions of dollars, and then they apply for the PPP program.
Oh, look at Harvard, topic. A $40+ billion endowment, and they took $9 million from the taxpayers. I mean, they finally gave it back.
Unbelievable.
But our own Senator Warren, right, takes $350,000 a year to teach one course. And then she is going to lecture us about giving free education to college students. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. But yes,
she takes $300,000.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, $350,000 for one course. And that's it. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, to talk about the nerve to talk about the cost of colleges, and that we should either forgive all the loans or offer free college. Not if we got to pay professors, and I'm doing air quotes, Michael, $350,000 for one course. I mean, that's just ridiculous. She's the last person that should be talking about college loans and college costs. But there are all of these facilities out there that we could do stuff with. But I think it comes back to the issue here is the categories you're talking about, mental health and the addicts. If somebody doesn't want to do the work and get the help, how do you deal with them then? Because, like I said, the addict, and I've seen this, I've dealt with this, I've seen it firsthand. Yeah. No, I'm not going to the shelter because I can't be high, I can't drink, I got to be there by 8.
We're not going to put them in a shelter. We're not going to put them in shelters. They're going to create modern facilities, modern properties where people can go to and feel a little bit more comfortable, feel a little bit better about themselves. I mean, you don't feel good about yourself when you go into a shelter. You feel miserable. I mean, the shelters in New York City, for example, I mean, the stupidity, I mean, they put them in the shelters right next to each other. And of course, probably 70 or 80% of them now have the virus from that. But you don't do that. You create facilities. Look, not everybody's going to want to help themselves, and not everybody's going to want to go off the streets. But you know what? They're not going to have a choice. We shouldn't allow people to sleep on the streets. It's not healthy for them. They end up having a higher suicide rate. They also end up have a shorter life. We help them out. We help them off. We create programs where we're aimed to help these people. You know, I believe you can help a lot of people. Now, right, you have to want to be helped, but I really think you can help a lot of people and help them to not want to be on the streets. Who wants to be on the streets? They're miserable. I mean, I talk to homeless people on the streets all the time, and they're very miserable. Some of them you can't even talk to because they're very mentally ill, and they don't, they're not all there. And then some of them you speak to, and they want a better life. They don't understand what they need direction. They need help, and the city just doesn't provide them with that. They feel like you stick them in a shelter, and the city's doing their job.
Yeah.
And
Michael,
I mean, the mayor. Go ahead.
Let me ask you about Section 8 situations, because sometimes I see these situations where somebody is going to apply for Section 8, and for those that don't know what that is, maybe we can fill that in. It's a voucher program by the federal government that they will come into a community, and based on the prevailing market cost rate. So say a one-bedroom in this market is $850 in this market, but you go to Boston and a one-bedroom's $2,700. It doesn't matter. What they do is they say, all right, we're going to take I think it's 33% of your income, whatever it is. So say you're on SSI or SSDI, they say, we'll take 30% of that. That's what you pay in rent. We will pay the difference in any given market. But Section 8 has a lot of rules to go with it. And one of them is about, if you're a felon, if you had been convicted of a felony, you're not allowed to be in Section 8 housing. And should we lighten that up if somebody, they committed a felony as a kid or 21 years old?
Yes.
Now they're 35 or 38 years old. They've got this on the record. Should they be totally exempt, or should we say, look, you're not an active criminal here, but we can get you off the street with the voucher program here, the Section 8 program? And
most of these people that qualify to get in these programs, you have to make sure they're rehabilitated. You have to make sure that they're, mentally there. And, I think at that point, whether you serve time or not, you should have an equal opportunity for housing. Mm-hmm. We need to help people, not hinder people. Hinder them and not give them that opportunity. Makes no sense.
Sometimes when I look at some of the rules that they put in there, I think that it's just an easy way to weed people out and not have to help them because the list is so long. I mean, the Section 8, right? It's such a demand to get in it, and for a long time, it was shut down. Right? They weren't taking any new Section 8s. But
there's a long waiting list in New York for people to get affordable housing. I mean, it's just so expensive. I mean, it's very, very expensive. But I think that the city needs to, whether it's Boston or New York or any of the other major cities, they need to partner with the federal government, and they need to work together, and they need to come up with solutions. I mean, I'm trying to get a summit together between the federal and the states who have the most of these problems, and come up with these solutions. Let's try to work this out. To have, for example, to have affordable housing in less expensive areas. I mean, New York City is a very expensive area. You need to have
about 3 minutes, Joe. 3.
That's critical.
Yeah, Mike.
Otherwise,
let me ask you this
afford
because we're coming up on the clock here. What is the first thing or two, the first two things, let's say, that you say need to be done, that we have to do to get in the right direction? What law has to be changed, or what policy has to be done? What is the first step? And if you could have this summit and everybody in the summit followed your suggestion, what would those be?
Well, number one, I think we have to create rehabilitation programs to help people. You have to get people off the streets, and you have to get them into these rehabilitation programs. But to do that, you have to look at creating these modern facilities with these programs. I mean,
but are you talking rehab from drugs,
program,
or rehab like a work rehab?
Oh, rehab from drugs. Rehab from alcohol, or just mentally ill people. People who need to be medicated. But we don't have these facilities. We have to take the time to build these facilities. In these retired military bases or whatever, which is less costly.
So
and
the
then
first
you have
step
to
is
get
to
away.
get the units. We actually have to get housing units built or converted. I mean, it's a lot easier to convert something that's a structure already there than to build from zero. And
I was driving through Fort Monmouth not too long ago in Eatontown, New Jersey. And it's a military base that closed down several years back, and all these buildings are there. They're empty. Nobody's using them. I mean, why not use them to house homeless people and to help them out? I mean, there's so many things we can do. But I think that the other priority would be we have to get homeless.
A minute and a half.
You have to change. I would change the laws, because right now the law says you can't force somebody off the street unless they're a danger to themselves and a danger to other people. You have to change that law. And I think you have to get the homeless off the streets. It's dangerous because it's dangerous to them, and it's dangerous to the people who live in the communities, and it's dangerous to the businesses.
Sure. And I've always maintained that they call it signing here. I don't know if they call it that in other parts, but people who are at the end of the exit ramp or at intersection
coming up on 1 minute.
Signs, please, or whatever. I've always made, and there was a suit here in Worcester about that, and the court said, no, freedom of speech, you can't stop them. That's a public danger because they're stepping out into traffic. They're causing distractions. I think the law needs to be changed there. But
40 seconds.
We're running out of time. Quickly, where can people find you, or if they can follow you?
Yes, they can. They can go to www.centralparkcivicassociation.com. That's www.centralparkcivicassociation.com.
All right, fantastic. All right, Michael, thank you very much. A great conversation. I hope you can come back another time. We ran out of time this time.
It's my pleasure, Joe. Thank you, and keep up the good work on your show. I'm going to start listening to it online. Great show.
All right, that's good to hear.
15 seconds.
All right, that was Michael Fisher, fantastic guest. All right, folks, we'll be back for hour 2 of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000. Lines open and available. Stick with us.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock.
I got to make a note to pull that for a
Special report, coronavirus update. I'm Christopher Cruz. Some cities and states have begun loosening lockdown orders, even as the confirmed U.S. death toll from the virus has risen to almost 52,000, with more than 905,000 cases. Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma have been reopening their economies, among others. One of the Georgia businesses reopening is in Valdosta, where owner Shannon Stafford has a hair salon with some new rules for customers.
We're taking temperatures. We have a questionnaire for the client to fill out, along with a assumption of risk and a waiver of liability for them to read over. That's going to be something important, not only for my salon, but a lot of businesses as well who's planning on opening.
China today reported no new deaths for the 10th straight day and just 12 new cases. Russia today reported 5,966 new cases in just the past 24 hours. I'm Christopher Cruz. Many Americans who've lost their jobs temporarily or permanently during the coronavirus shutdowns are using credit cards to make ends meet. But some people are getting a shock when they try to use the cards.
Many credit card companies are concerned that some people won't be able to pay off their debts right now, and they're either lowering credit limits or completely canceling some accounts. Ted Rossman is an industry analyst with creditcards.com.
Card companies actually have a lot more freedom than most people realize when it comes to setting credit limits or even offering cards entirely.
You can sometimes beat them to the punch by calling and asking if they'll lower your interest rate or let you skip a payment.
Correspondent Steve Kastenbaum in New York. An unmanned Russian cargo capsule has docked with the International Space Station this morning. It brought fuel, water, food, medicine, and other supplies to the 2 Russians and 1 American on board. The craft docked just 3.5 hours after takeoff from Kazakhstan. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Please listen. This is important. Anyone can be affected by the prescription opioid crisis. If you think you've been hurt by Purdue or its prescription opioids like OxyContin, you may be entitled to compensation as part of Purdue's bankruptcy, but you have to file a claim. Claims may include overdose, death, substance use disorder, lost wages, and neonatal abstinence syndrome. A confidential claim can be filed by individuals, a legal guardian, by survivors or relatives of people who have died or are disabled. The deadline to file a claim is June 30th, 2020, or you will lose your right to file a claim. For more information, visit PurduePharmaClaims.com, or you can call toll-free 1-844-217-0912. That's 1-844-217-0912. Paid for by Prime Clerk, LLC.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Lavache, you're all set with your mortgage. And I assume you understand what you just signed.
A stack of papers, George?
That's right. And for future, just call this number if you need anything. And, ooh, yeah, I'm gonna need that pen back.
The mortgage process can be confusing. Looking for the right rate, the right term, and most importantly, the right place to get your mortgage. At Clinton Savings Bank, we are committed to getting the mortgage that's right for you. You may even receive up to a $750 credit off your closing costs. Plus, right now, you can lock in the rate from your pre-qualification for 90 days while you look for a home. So what are you waiting for? Definitely not this.
Oh, boy. Hi, Mrs. Lavache. How can I help? Oh, you're breaking up. Try again later.
Subject to credit approval. Offer may be withdrawn at any time. For complete details, exclusions, and credit costs and terms, call 888-744-4272. Apply at clintonsavings.com. NMLS number 422081. Member FDIC. Member DIF. Equal housing lender.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger-looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Our topics are large and small. When you really need to know, we are the show. You want to know, it's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Joe Mangiacotti Show for Saturday, the 25th. Be back tomorrow morning from 6 to 7. Will be Reverend Peter Preble with Faith in America, and I'll pick it up at 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock tomorrow. Our lines open and available, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, and our text line open as well, 617-297-8388. That's 617-297-8388, or you can email textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. It appears on the same screen. All right, moving along. At this point, I would like to invite into the conversation Dr. Michael Busler. Dr. Busler is a PhD, a public policy analyst, economics expert, and professor of finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. Michael is, a very accomplished man. Good morning, Doctor. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let me dive into this. You are basically a political and economics analyst, so you're in the thick of it here. And we are in a situation that we haven't experienced for over 100 years. The Spanish flu back in 1917, and things were different. It was a different world at that time. So for modern day, this black swan event is something we haven't dealt with before. And there is a debate as to whether it's as bad as some are making it out to be, whether there was some hype to it or not. But what's real is the economic restrictions and what's going on, right? The stock market, at the beginning of this, the stock market had reached a high of 29.5, right? In 3 years, it went from 18.5 to 29.5, 11,000 points. Now, what are we hovering about? 3.5 above what it was when the president took office. In the big picture of things, are we in big trouble, or are we going to have either a U or a V recovery, and are we going to roar back to where we were prior to COVID-19?
Well, my view is somewhat optimistic, and here's the reasons. So if you take a look at where we were before the virus hit, January and February of this year were extremely strong. The economy this year was probably headed for the best growth year we've had since 2005. And then, of course, the virus hit. And as a result of the virus, the government, as you know, had to shut down, essentially, shut down the economy for at least, it looks like, a 6-week period. So what we're going to see is GDP growth for the first quarter, January, February, March. We were good for the first couple months. Disaster in March. The number, I think, comes out later this week, and it'll probably be slightly negative. The second quarter, we're going to see a huge drop in GDP. Some are forecasting as high as 25 or 30%. However, we should turn that around fairly quickly. Will this be a U or a V-shaped recovery? And I would say yes, I think so. And I'm looking for a very sharp recovery, and here's the reasons for that. So we're going to start to reopen the economy really about now. I think by the end of May, most of the economy will be open. Now, places like New York and other hot spots are going to take a little longer to open. But even that, by the end of June, everything, I think, will be reopened under somewhat of a restrictive basis. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So the third quarter of the year, the economy will start to grow, and I think we'll see some real strong positive growth in the fourth quarter. You mentioned the stock market was up to 29,000, dropped down under 19. It's back now to about 24, so it's almost half of a loss has come back. I think by the end of the year or early next year, the stock market will have recovered just about everything. Now, why am I so optimistic? Well, the federal government does not want this recession to be very steep, and it will be steep, but they don't want it to be very long-lived. So they did three things that will encourage that to happen. In the stimulus package, number one, the federal government is giving away free money. I mean, literally giving away free money. If you filed a tax return last year or the year before, you get, and you're not making over a certain amount, you get $1,200. For a family of four, you get $3,400. Now that goes to everybody, whether you've been negatively impacted by this economic turndown or not. So that's going to give consumers money to spend, extra money to spend. And once the economy opens up again and businesses are going, people will have money to spend.
Well, doctor, because that isn't based on a need basis. It's just everybody gets it. So you could, your income could be the same. Nothing has changed for you. There are people in certain jobs and positions where income, and maybe the income even went up because they're getting overtime if they're a nurse or a doctor, right? So anyway, like doctors get overtime. You know what I mean? There are certain jobs that you might even be making more money. So it's not based on need. It's just simply, look, we're throwing this money out. Now, I've always, since this stimulus package went in, I actually even have a problem referring to it as stimulus because it almost applies that we needed to stimulate the economy. Our economy was so stimulated prior to COVID-19, right? So I look at it as a Band-Aid. I look at it as a patch, a bridge loan, just a helping, because the economy is rumbling under the surface. It was, right? We pushed it down. And we're holding our boot on its throat. And if we take our boot off, will it just come roaring up and go back at least to close to where it was is the question. And then how do we get there? When you say the feds don't want this deep reset, I agree. But there are people out there, doctor, who do want it. I mean, we have Bill Maher actually saying, bring on a recession. I don't care. I've got millions, a mansion in Beverly Hills. I don't care how much, what people get hurt, who gets hurt. Bring it on. If it's going to make Trump look bad, I don't care about the American people. So there are people rooting for this to go on for a long time and hoping, because they have known for a long time that given the economy, that this guy is almost unbeatable if the economy is the way it is, and their only hope is to not only do they have to get us in a bad situation, but then they have to convince the American people that it's his fault. He's dealing with a black swan event, and I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, you got to say he's done a pretty good job handling this. No other president in recent history in our lifetimes have had to deal with this situation.
I agree with you. A couple of things. One, there are people that are rooting for a recession because without that, I don't think Trump can be beaten at all. Fortunately, those people are not in control of the government. The people that are in control realize that we can't let this recession get too steep. It's just going to hurt too many people. So that's the first thing. Second thing, with regard to the word stimulus, the idea was because the economy is dropping so fast in this current quarter because we've essentially shut everything down, we need to stimulate economic activity so that it does start to recover. So that's what they mean by
But of course, if you can't go to a restaurant, if you can't go shopping for anything you want, I mean, you can't. You know what I'm saying? We're going into these major stores, doctor, and you're not allowed to go into the food, to the garden section and get seeds, or you're not allowed to go out into the middle of the lake by yourself and drop a fishing line. So that's a whole nother discussion that we were doing earlier in the show, that some of these restrictions make no sense, and some of these governors are just way overreaching, and quite frankly, a lot of it is unconstitutional if you were to look at it.
Yeah, even the Attorney General himself said there's only so far you can go with this, and many people agree that governors have overreached. So if I just real quick, the stimulus, people are getting money. The other two things that were in the stimulus package, anybody that's unemployed gets their unemployment compensation from the state, and the federal government added $600 a week to that. So they'll have, those unemployed people will have more money to spend too. Now that is a good and a bad thing.
Because that's more money than they were probably making to begin with. Yeah.
Exactly. That's going to discourage people going back to work. The third thing in the stimulus package was to keep small businesses going. So the federal government will lend a small business enough money to pay their payroll and some other expenses for a 2-month period. If they don't lay anybody off during the 2 months, the loan turns into a grant and you don't have to pay it back. So companies are going to bring workers back. Even if there's no business, they'll bring the workers back and do something. But once the economy, they're allowed to reopen and consumers have money to spend, they'll be in a position to reopen quickly. So those three things in the stimulus package, I think, will stop this recession from getting real severe and lasting real long. If I can just make one other point, the stimulus package is both good and bad. It's bad in that the deficit this year will be huge. We had a $1 trillion deficit before this happened, and we're talking about spending it. They've approved spending for almost another $3 trillion more. That's going to take the deficit this year to over $4 trillion, plus we're going to lose some tax revenue being shut down. At some point, we're going to have to address this deficit problem and the public debt. I agree, let's get through the hardship we have now, but by the fall and early next year when we're doing much better, we're going to have to address this deficit and debt problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on here, Doctor, right? There's a lot of angles to this, and there's a balancing act across the board here, because we've also got the situation with the oil feud going on, and the price of oil. And I know some people ask me, what are you talking about? It's great. Oil drops $13 a barrel. This is wonderful. And I say, well, no, look, you have a balancing act here. First of all, you've got the shale, the fracking companies here in the United States, which is, by comparison, a fairly new industry, which means they're very leveraged out, right? They all have big bank loans because that's what they needed to do to get going. And as long as the price of oil was, say, 40-ish, $45, $48 a barrel, they're making their bank loans with no problem. It also made us energy independent, and it kept oil down, the price of oil down, which is, causing a little bit of a problem, say, for the Middle East or the Saudis, but it weakens Putin a little bit because, Russia or Putin, he gets his power from Russia's oil. And the more people buying Russia's oil, the more money he's making. The higher the oil is, the more money he's making. If we're energy independent and we're keeping the price of oil under $50 a barrel, we're not dumping a lot of money into Putin's budget, right? So that's a good thing. But if the oil goes too slow, it's going to be a cascading effect, Doctor, right? Because you're going to have them not be able to handle those bank loans. The banks are going to be in trouble, and they're going to be, out of luck. These fracking shaling companies are going to go under, and all of a sudden our oil production drops way down. Now, the president said the other day, 13. He's buying. I mean the royal we here, guys. The country is buying as much oil as we can fit into our storage tanks. Because it's so cheap. Exactly. In fact, the price was negative there for one day, so they would actually pay you to take the oil. So what happened is this worldwide recession, almost a depression level, not in length of it, but in the depth of it, has caused demand for energy to drop in the 30 to 40% range. Now, these companies and other countries really have to keep the operation going, so they keep pumping. Some of the countries, like Saudi Arabia, at $10 a barrel, they can make money. Their costs are so low there. But as you point out, the American companies can't. $45 to $50 is a good price for oil. It keeps the energy industry going, and it keeps gasoline, subject to your state's taxes, roughly in the $2.50 a gallon
range, and that seems to work well for everyone. So,
Doctor, I saw a
oil
gas sign last night, $1.89 for regular in Massachusetts last night. Driving, I was floored. I haven't seen under $2 in God knows how long, right? I don't know how long it will stay there, but
yeah, I paid $1.84 yesterday myself. So I see that. So that's a little bit of a help to consumers. Now, of course, they're not buying any gas now because they can't go out and drive their cars. But once everything starts up again, the low gas price will take a little time to rebound. But again, in the meantime, consumers get a little bit of a break in that once they start driving, they'll less money they'll be spending on gas, giving more money to spend for something else.
Yeah. And Doctor, if we start to open stuff up with such low gas, and I think the airlines, people aren't going to be as quick to jump into a metal tube right now and be that close to each other. So I think that if we start opening things up, this summer could be an incredible summer in the sense that you have very low gas prices, which means people have no problem driving all over the country and visiting our parks and our landmarks, and they'll get out there. Meanwhile, you're going to have deals out there because the hotel and motel industry, right? They're hurting right now. So I mean, right now you can get great deals. I think that as we pull these restrictions up, the tourism and vacation dollars will be huge this summer, as if we're allowed to go out.
Yeah, and I certainly hope so. I live in New Jersey, just downbeat from Atlantic City, so I'm in a resort area. So all of this is very important to us also. And I agree with everything you said that this could be a great summer. The only caveat is we don't know how behavior will be changed as a result of this. In other words, with people hiding behind masks for 6 weeks now and staying away from everybody, when the government says, look, the number of cases is down, maybe one day in July we'll pick up the newspaper and say there are no new cases reported anywhere in the country. Once that happens, will consumers and average people
go back to normal,
feel confident enough to, fill up a football stadium or go in a metal tube and take a plane ride somewhere? So that remains to be seen a little bit. I hope that people get back to normal as soon as possible from a just a healthy standpoint. We need to get out and mix with people and do our jobs and shop and do what we're used to doing. I'm hoping that happens relatively quickly, and I share your optimism that the summer could be very good.
Well, you think, and you alluded to it a second ago, behavior changes. I think that, I don't know if handshaking will totally go away, but I think there'll be a significant drop in handshaking. I was never a big person for the handshaking, only because you shake somebody's hand, it's wet or it's clammy, and you're like, what's that about? And then do we really need to do that? And as far as the masks go, I think once people realize, and I was listening to a doctor from one of the New York universities last night, and he kind of rolled out some of the numbers. And if you're under 50, you have almost nothing to worry about, and that most of the cases are coming with people, elderly people, and then or people with underlying conditions, compromised immune systems, obesity, diabetes happens to be a big problem, right? That big a role into it. But if you're under 50 years old and relatively a healthy person, even if you do contract the actual virus, chances are you're going to be uncomfortable for a couple days, like getting a flu, and you're going to be fine. But in the big picture of things, that's where the problem was. I mean, as the president says, one person dying from this is one too many. But the reality of it is, we have had deaths. There'll probably be more deaths. But are we at the point where we're overreacting? And and I hate to, because it started to sound cliche, Doctor, the treatment, the solution being worse, the cure being worse than the actual virus. When you've got these states, Nebraska or Oklahoma or something, wide open with, next to nothing for cases and big wide open spaces, does the whole country have to behave like New York should have to behave? I mean, that's a dense population. They're on top of each other. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when there's a tornado in Oklahoma, does New York go into their basements?
No, and that's a great point. I live in New Jersey, as I just mentioned. Now, North Jersey around New York has been clobbered. They're as bad as New York City, but southern New Jersey is much different. So I'm a little nervous. Governor Murphy, governor of New Jersey, will set a policy for the state that may work for North Jersey, but we don't need it down here.
Right.
In Atlantic and Cape May counties, the two counties just south of Atlantic City along the beach, there have been less than 1,000 cases and less than 50 fatalities. So we don't behave the same way as North Jersey, and I don't want the governor to say that this is what's going to happen to New Jersey, thinking that he's looking more towards North Jersey than South Jersey. The other thing that South Jersey has going, they just released a study a day or two ago that says the virus can't live more than a couple minutes when you have temperature above 70, 75 degrees, humidity above 80%, and being in direct sunlight. Well, starting around May 15th, that's every day down here in South Jersey. That's the temperature, the humidity. So I think we should be able to open the southern part of the state a lot faster than the northern part of the state. And it's the same argument you were given. Something in Montana shouldn't be the same as it is in New York. Well, something in North Jersey is not the same as it is down here in South Jersey. And I'm a little worried about coming up with a policy for the state.
Yeah. Do you have any feelings on governors overreaching with some of these orders? I mean, we were talking early about it on the show, you know, when we have governors saying, the Constitution's above my pay grade. I wasn't even thinking about that. And you know, and we have governors saying, no, you can't go out into the middle of Lake Michigan and drop a fishing line out there all by yourself. You can't go to the garden center at the big box store and get seeds or you know, gardening material. Why can't you? I mean, it's not making sense. I think there's been a lot of overstepping, and is there an ulterior motive behind imposing these restrictions? I mean, we're basically, I think it was Attorney General Barr who said, in essence, it's martial law, just not using that term, but it looks a lot like it.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think particularly mentioned Michigan as a governor that clearly has overstepped, and in fact had to pull back some of that a little bit because the protests were so great. And you also bring another point up. Do they have another motive here rather than just helping the people? Are they still wanting to hurt Donald Trump and make things look as bad as possible because this is a re-election year? Now, we don't know for sure what their motivations are, but some of these governors have really gone way overboard, and they don't have any right to do this. They're a little bit power hungry, I guess, but they don't really have a right to do this. I think they can make some very strong suggestions to people, but to arrest people for going outside, you simply can't do that. It's
and there's the I'll say it, the stupidity of that. Hey, we got to let people out of our jails and prisons because of COVID-19, but if you don't wear a mask, we're going to incarcerate you. Whoa.
A minute and a half. I'm going to wrap up for handling change.
Your head spin at that point. And first of all, if they're in prison, I mean, that's the ultimate shelter in place, right? I mean,
exactly.
You don't have a choice. All right.
And I was just going to say, I'm not so sure that shelter in place was the best idea either, because now they're saying if you go out in the sunshine and get fresh air, that will help to kill some of this virus. So here we are in this problem.
Break anytime.
Absolutely. All right. Excellent. You know, Doctor, we're running out of time, but I thank you so much for joining us again, Dr. Michael Busler, political and economic analyst, and you are currently at the Stockton University. That's in New Jersey. We can also find you on Newsmax, The Hill, The Western Journal, and townhall.com, correct?
That's true. And my Twitter account is @mbusler. That's @mbusler. And if you're on Facebook, search for Funding Democracy. My page will come up and you can read my columns.
That's fantastic. I'll certainly add that to my stuff as well. I appreciate it, and I hope that you'll come back again and as we get through this and comment from time to time.
I certainly will, Joe. Thanks for having me. I look forward to coming back.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, fantastic. That's Dr. Michael Busler. Again, he made some great points, and actually, I think on this whole show today, You, the callers, have brought up some great stuff, and I want to thank Michael Fisher as well. He had a lot to bring to the table. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. We're going to come back for the final segment of today's show here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We're going to break for Handling Change, and it's the fourth Saturday of the month, so that means we're going to hear from One Worcester Homes. Gary Gay is going to talk to us, so stick for that, and I'll be back on the other side on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Good morning and welcome to Handling Change from the Cantiani Insurance Studios. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and Gary Gay of One Worcester Homes joined us this week. The purchase or sale of your home or investment property could be one of the largest challenges you have, and Gary can help you handle those challenges. Good morning, Gary.
Morning, Joe. How you doing today?
Well, I'm fantastic, and we're called Handling Change, and I got to tell you, there's a lot more challenges and a lot more change going on right now than I think anyone ever bargained for. So I guess the question to ask is, how does the COVID pandemic affect the market in the way of properties moving, pricing, that kind of thing, as well as just all those other things people are wondering about? How do you show a home? How do you close? Can you tell me a little bit about how things have differed during this pandemic?
Well, absolutely, Joe. You hit the nail on the head with that. We are definitely dealing with change, as most industries are, on a daily basis. Most agents who have been leveraging technology now for a little while are a little bit more comfortable handling while maintaining the social distancing. Again, for someone to buy a house, they still want to see the house in person, walk through it, and see what the house looks like.
Virtual tours and technology are wonderful and are great tools, but it doesn't replace walking through that house, touching the countertop, and just feeling the home itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of changes taking place in the real estate market in terms of how homes are being sold and really limiting exposure to keep everyone safe. And that's from agents, lawyers, buyers, sellers, from everybody's point of view.
Are sellers leery about allowing people to walk through their home? And if so, do buyers come with PPE and masks?
Yes. Most listings right now are providing virtual tours, which is very helpful for vetting some buyers. Once you see that virtual tour or Matterport, you can really walk through and envision yourself in the space. If there's big red flags, then there's no need to go out and see that property. However, when you do see a property that you want to see, whether it's vacant or there's someone else living in there, we are taking precautions in terms of wearing all the right PPE, making sure we're protected. Anyone who's selling a home is making sure all the doors are open, the windows are open, so there's nice ventilation throughout the house, and we don't have to go touching all the doorknobs and exposing people. After we leave the property, we'll make sure that everything is sprayed down and Lysol all the door handles for any of them that did get touched, and just trying to make sure we keep everyone as distant as possible.
It's all great, by the way, but let me ask you, has the market slowed down? Are we still seeing strong numbers? The market was doing fantastic and was expected to be a wonderful spring market. How are we doing on the actual numbers?
Joe, what I'm seeing, certainly the data shows that the amount of homes being sold this year versus last year is on pace. So we do not see a slowdown in the market at all. It's still a seller's market where the amount of sellers is shadowed by the amount of buyers that are available in the market right now. And even though some buyers have been affected by the tightened requirements for getting a loan, those who are still getting a loan are very qualified and very motivated to buy a home. So they are still competing in most cases for homes. It's still a great time to sell, and the prices are staying consistent with what we've seen, this increase around Worcester over the past year or two.
And it's so hard to beat these interest rates right now. I mean, even if you're refining, which brings me to another question, and that is, a lot of people are furloughed and or even lost their jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. How does that affect closing? If you've already been qualified and you're about to go to the closing table and you don't have a job, that typically does not allow you to close.
Yeah, that's right. And the lenders are doing what they can to avoid that situation. However, they are doing employment checks generally the day of closing or day before closing to make sure that income isn't affected. That is probably the number one reason that deals are falling through right now is from people who are losing that income and they need 2 incomes in the house, or they need that additional income to qualify for the mortgage.
Fantastic. That's a lot of great information, Gary. Good stuff to know. Thank you for joining us again for Handling Change. I want you to stay safe and keep up the great work, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. Stay safe. Keep you and your loved ones close.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us for Handling Change from the Cantiani Insurance Studios. Join us each week at 7:30 as we give you the tools to handle the changes in your life. Visit us at handlingchange.info, and you can find Gary and all the fantastic realtors at One Worcester Homes on Facebook at One Worcester Homes, or email oneworcesterhomes@gmail.com, and you can call Gary at 413-427-5506. For Gary, I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN and, of course, AM 730 WACE. And we're live streaming on TuneIn. So if you don't have TuneIn, it takes seconds to download it on your device. Punch in WCRN, and you can take us anywhere. We're also live streaming on Facebook. Go to Joe Mangic Show. That's Joe Mangiacotti Radio Show. And the audio is there. There is a camera in the studio. Not a big production, folks, but you can get the audio there. 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available, so jump in for the last segment with your thoughts and comments. Our text line also available at 617-297-8388. Yes, I've gotten the text. Catherine, thank you so much. Area code 845, you're welcome. So let's get a couple things in before we need to move on. Coming up at 9 o'clock, Gary Goldman with Business, Politics, and Lifestyle. But 2 things I did want to go back to. Mark had called and made reference to Trump walking out of the press conference, and he did. He was also speaking after a government homeland official revealed the results that they've tested. It shows that sunlight and UV rays do help kill the coronavirus. So the best practices graphic, this is what they had posted at that briefing, stated that heat and humidity suppress COVID-19. Right? The doctor was just talking about that a second ago on the show. So we can move a lot of these activities outside. I mean, that's also, look, Americans, we have a lot of ingenuity. We can be very creative. The weather is breaking. Some of these restaurants, they're going to have to take some tables and seats out, right? I think people are just going to want that. They may not be required to by law or by the rules or the city ordinance, but I think a lot of restaurants will say, you know what? I'm going to take some tables out, some seats out. I'm not going to put more than 4 people at a table. And if they can or they have some outdoor seating, perfect, right? Get out there in the fresh air, in the sunlight. So that is what the president was talking about. And he was kind of riffing and talking about the light, wiping it, that there is processes where the UV light can penetrate the skin and get into the bloodstream, and that can be effective in also killing it. And then he was talking about disinfecting, and he didn't say to inject Lysol or anything of that nature. So let's get that straight. I mean, the guy does a 2+ briefing off the cuff every day, 7 days a week, and they're just waiting for him to say something they can jump on. But the other thing out there, too, before we have to go, new evidence supporting Tara Reid's, I don't know if you recognize that name yet, folks, Tara Reid's sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden has continued to emerge, but with more details. When the assault happened, she did tell her mother, her brother, a close friend at the time, and they've all confirmed the allegations. Now, this is a big contrast to the Kavanaugh situation, right, where nobody could remember anything. She didn't tell anybody anything. Couldn't remember the exact location or who was there. But some new evidence has emerged, right? The credibility of Tara Reid's claim that she told her mother about the allegations of sexual harassment and assault related to her former boss, then Senator Joe Biden. Now, through a spokesperson, he denied the allegations, and Reid has claimed to various media outlets, including The Intercept, that she told her mother, a close friend, and her brother about the harassment, and to varying degrees of detail about the assault at the time. Her brother, Colin Moulton, that's his name, and her friend, who has asked to remain anonymous for this, both confirmed that they heard about the allegations from her directly at the time. And Reid's mother died in 2016, but both her brother and friend also confirmed Reid had told the mother, and that her mother, a longtime feminist and activist, urged her to go to the police. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let's go to the phones. Peter, good morning, sir. Thank you for holding, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, nice to talk to you again.
Oh, Peter
Hope
and Jimmy.
everything all is well.
This is actually Pete I, the tech guy. I didn't realize it was that Peter. Hey, sir. How are you, man? Good to talk to you.
I'm up early enough to hear you today. I had to, son missed the bus, so he needed a ride, so thought I'd catch the show a little bit while I was awake.
Always welcome. Thank you for doing so.
Well, not at all. A couple of things.
Aspect? Get into it for me. What are you hearing here?
Well, first of all, since you just brought up the Tara Reid stuff, which I wasn't going to talk about, I think it's very interesting that both Bernie Sanders and AOC have been asked directly about this during interviews, but Joe Biden hasn't, even though mainstream media types have had him for interviews, and no one will say it, no one will mention it, because everyone's afraid of what he will say. Right. We reached a point where you don't know what Joe Biden's going to say.
Well, Peter, isn't it like having that, your granddad who's lost it, or that old uncle, you don't really engage because you never know what they're going to say or what's going to trigger them. Can you imagine him being confronted about this? I mean, he told an auto worker, and the guy was probably 30 years old, right? Healthy young guy. He asked him to step out back, or told him he was going to slap him and stuff. I mean, he's lost all sense of reality. He doesn't understand what's going on half the time. Now, the treatment, I mean, if we were to draw a comparison that comparison of Kavanaugh and Biden, right? The rules that they were saying applied to Kavanaugh, which was basically absolutely guilty and you're a disgusting human being without any evidence, versus how the media so far has been dealing with Joe Biden in an allegation from a woman who remembers the details, where she was, who was there, and actually talked to several people about it at the time, and they've confirmed and collaborated that.
What's really amazing is CNN, which went all on Kavanaugh, and they've had one written story. The last time I checked, they had still not mentioned it on the air, which is it's so amazing. It's just, you think about it and you're saying, how can this be possible? How can it be possible? And of course it can be possible because, and I actually did a post on this call, which was, I don't know if the people who follow history remember there was a famous letter from Abraham Lincoln to Horace Greeley of the New York Times saying, everything I do to, win the war, to save the Union, whether on slavery. I'm not pro or anti-slavery. If I can save the Union by ending slavery, I'll do it. If I can save it by keeping it, or if I can save it by keeping it some places and ending it others, I'll do it.
Right.
This is what the media is concerning Donald Trump. As far as the media is concerned, they want to save the country from Donald Trump. So whatever they do, whether they back China or whether they report on China critically, like there's been a little bit of reporting that they're cracking down in Hong Kong while nobody's paying attention, it's all about what can we do to hurt Donald Trump. They will cheer on it's like the closing, the something in Georgia. They're not afraid of people dying in Georgia. They're afraid of people living. Because if the economy comes back and people are able to function, and the economy booms back too soon, Trump will get credit. Yeah. And that's what they're afraid of.
Pete, before I forget about this, I don't know if you caught this, but one of the doctors and one of the young guys that in the beginning of this, and he has sounded the alarm, and he was very clever because he got it out of China. He was in Wuhan, and he was able to get it onto YouTube, and it got out of China, and he was actually showing Chinese state police and officials going around asking questions about the virus and circumstances there before it really broke. So that blows China's whole claim that they knew nothing about it earlier on at that point. Well, the guy disappeared. He just reappeared, and now he's saying in a public statement that he was treated very well. He was fed and kept in good shape, and the police didn't hurt. They gave him stuff to read. In other words, right? And so his whole thing is, if you go out and you say this stuff, A, we'll let you live, but B, we'll let you go out there as long as you say these things. Now, I can't imagine what they did to him and what torture he was subjected to while in custody. But go check this out, and because this guy is clever, he's been able to get things. We haven't heard the last of him, but you know, he got re-educated. He was in a re-education camp, and he's lucky to be alive. But what he's saying, it's forced to be said to live.
Well, like I say, commie's got a commie. Anyone who anyone with any knowledge of history, anyone with any background, anyone who's actually studied the Cold War or has any knowledge of communism or how communists function knows that commie's got a commie. That anyone is surprised by any of this, that anybody expects different from the Chinese communists is amazing to me. It's just
absolutely.
It's so ridiculous that people are treating it as otherwise. It just blows my mind.
Hey, I've got full lines. Well, you got enough something you want to leave on something? I got full lines.
Well, yes, I'm going to leave with a shameless plug that I'm doing a live stream called The Tech Guy Off the Radio twice a week, once at 12:35 a.m. on Monday mornings, and that's the Tech Guy's Midnight Court is what I call it, and once at 9:30 a.m. on Friday mornings, which is the Tech Guy's AM.
6 minutes to go.
Tech Guy Off the Radio, so you can catch me there.
Shoot me that stuff, and I'll remind people during my show, on Saturdays and Sundays, Pete. So shoot me an email or a message with that. But good, and you can still find you at thetechguy.com.
Still thetechguyblog.com, The Tech Guy Blog on Twitter and on YouTube.
Got it. Thank you very much. Pete I, the Tech Guy, folks. You remember him for years. He was here. He was part of Cameo Media Productions, and we did the show. We were multiple stations. Had a great time with Pete I, the Tech Guy. 508-871-7000. Let me jump to Keith from New England for Trump Stores. Hey, Keith. How are you, man?
Good, Joe. How's it going?
Fantastic. Busy morning. A lot of great callers, great guests. What's going on with New England for Trump Stores? The stores are down, but the online shopping and online ability is still going on. Are you doing deliveries, or do they have to come pick it up, or you just ship it? What's the deal?
Yeah, so we're just doing right now online, and I'm actually going to be putting out some modified pricing just to, send some people to check things out on the website. We are doing a limited, appointment only kind of thing at the stores. If somebody wanted to come in, one person at a time, we would definitely honor that where we can.
Now, isn't there a Patriot rally coming up?
I know that they're doing something today at 1 o'clock at the Bourne Bridge at the Rotary. We were there last week, and we'll be there again today. Everyone's wearing their masks and keeping their social distance. But
let me ask you that: do you sell masks, face masks? Are they Trump, or are they patriotic, or are they you're just plain masks so that people get them, or are they Trump masks?
So right now, all of my suppliers have been offering me this merchandise. I actually started another company called NE Rapid Health, and if you go to nerapidhealth.com, you'll see it. We're currently set up at our Bellingham store. We'll sell masks, gloves, sanitizer, and we're working on getting in Trump. That's been huge. Trump face masks. People are asking for them. They should be in hopefully next week, but we've been working on getting an actual mask like that as well.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. So you can actually have that.
4 minutes.
That's great. You put the Trump hat on, the Trump mask on, have the Trump pen, People know where you stand.
Yeah. It's great.
So, best place to go is still your Facebook page, New England. That's NE for Trump, as well as your website.
Yeah. The website you can buy merchandise as well. It's nefortrump.com. That's FOR Trump.com.
Got it. All right. Awesome, Keith. Very good. Warren Bridge. Is that today or tomorrow? That's today at 1, right? 1 o'clock.
1 to 3.
1 to 3.
There's a couple of other things coming up, too, but that's the one that's coming up immediately.
All right. We'll talk about them. Send them to me, and I'll make sure we talk about them tomorrow, or if you want to call in after 7 tomorrow, okay?
Beautiful. Thanks,
all right.
Joe.
Thank you, Keith. 508-871-7000. Richard, thank you for holding. I've got full line, so we're running through here. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Joe. Yeah, a couple quick points. First of all, about the coronavirus, I mean, if you can keep your immune system up, it's not going to affect you.
Yes.
But if you're
relatively healthy, guys, you're not going to die from it, right? Everybody that dies from it, they're extremely old. They have all these other underlying health conditions. Diabetes and obesity, I found out in the last 48 hours watching these doctors, is a huge detractor from it. That's a tough situation.
High blood pressure.
High blood pressure, right? But if you're, if you're under 50 years old and you're basically a healthy person, and I'm not talking, doing the keto diet and going to the gym 5 times a week, just simply a fairly healthy person, it's not deadly to you.
A minute and a half.
The thing I want to talk about is something I learned about 20 years ago, right? Because, like I said, I've been doing, talk shows and stuff like that for 39 years now. So about 20 years ago, I heard a doctor one time, all right, and he came out and he says, he had a machine, Joe, all right? And what it was, he hooked you up to it, and what he did, it was the ultraviolet light, Joe, okay?
Yeah.
And he put a patient there, and they would run their blood through the ultraviolet light.
And that's what Trump was talking about the other day, that we can get the UV light into the bloodstream. And,
exactly.
And then he said, just off the cuff, maybe somehow if we could do disinfectant.
No, this is true. I've heard this 20 years ago. I knew about
45 seconds.
Okay? So it's something that he must have just learned a little while ago. Somebody must have told him about what the heck was going on. Yeah. But, it's like cancer, right? This doctor said he could take cancer patients, put them on this, run their blood through there, because all cancer is just a virus.
Richard, unfortunately, against the clock, I got a break. Please call back tomorrow so we can pick this up. And, Gene, I can't get to you today, but Gary Goldman with Business Politics Lifestyle.
All right, take care.
Call him back, Gene. Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry, folks, but that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Tune in at 6 a.m. for Reverend Peter Preble with Faith in America. Follow me at Joe Mangi Show on social media.
On that 15. Out with Joe. You're listening to Out with Joe. Out with Joe. Put some bacon on a biscuit. Let's go.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. Well, you buy a hat like this, I'll bet you get a big bowl of soup, huh?
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Nothing But Cakes in White City Plaza, Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week we thought we'd take a look at how much to tip your delivery driver during